I swore Unit 407 was empty. That was my first mistake. My name is Adam. I work the night shift at St. Verick Storage. I need to write this down before I convince myself it didn't happen. I kept listening. I couldn't stop once it started. My Challenger 2000 radio. Its static was a comfort, then a question I was wrong. The quiet was just waiting. My shift at St. Verick Storage always starts the same way. Check the perimeter, log the temperature. It's an old place, built back when fireproof meant heavy steel and thick concrete. Most nights, it's a habit, a way to feel like I'm doing something, even when nothing's happening. Sometimes I'd minor stuff. Tonight felt normal at first. I was on the 4th floor, checking the ventilation ducts when I first heard it. A faint crackle. I paused, tilting my head, listening to the usual hum. Nothing. Probably just interference from this place always had quirks. I made a mental note, then continued my rounds. Didn't even bother to log it in my notebook. Too minor to bother with, I thought. I didn't realize it then. My shift was about to change. The next hour passed quietly. I checked the fire exits, locked the exterior gates, even made a quick coffee in my office. Every tea this time, it was a little longer, a little clearer. It wasn't just my radio either. There was an FA. I'd noticed it before in old facilities, usually when electronics were on the fritz. It was probably. The static was coming from a specific area. I walked slowly, my Challenger 2000 held out until the eyes stopped dead. Unit 407 had been empty for nearly 5 years. The last tenant, an elderly man named Henderson, moved out after his family convinced him to sell his house. It was a small unit, just Eno vacated and sealed, no contents. I even double-checked the log in my notebook. Empty. So why was M? My first thought was a mistake. Maybe someone had opened it. But the padlock was undisturbed. Thick thin, I considered an electrical fault. Perhaps a loose wire or some ancient, forgotten conduit-run old buildings, especially storage facilities, are full of forgotten infrastructure. I decided to say no need to make a fuss. Just a simple, logical explanation for a weird occurrence. Logic wouldn't save me. I knew it now. I reset the breakers, waited a minute, then returned to unit. I raised my Challenger 2000. The static wasn't gone. It was worse. Not just a crackle now, but a low. I pressed the radio closer to the unit door. The murmurs grew. I couldn't make out words, but so it wasn't an electrical fault. It was something else. Something in Unit 407. The silence of the facility pressed in around me. It was 3 a.m. No one else was here. My supervisor wouldn't be in until morning, and calling him 4 voices and static from an empty unit, it sounded insane. The air grew colder, or maybe it was just me. I felt completely alone, suspended in the quiet hum of the building, with only the murmuring radio F. I held the Challenger 2000 up again, closer to my ear. This time, the murmuring shifted. It wasn't J rhythms. And then a word. Faint, distorted, but undeniably a word. It sounded like Adam. My name. My breath hitched. I pulled the radio away, then pressed it back, heart pounding. Another word. Although the ozone smell was stronger now, sharp and acrid. It wasn't a malfunction. It was a communication. I didn't know what to do next, but I knew I couldn't leave it. My flashlight beam cut through to the padlock, untouched. I even shone my light through the tiny gap at the bottom of the door. Yet the voices persisted, a low, insistent hum through my Challenger 2000. It was locked from the OU, but not silent. Not empty at all. And that was far more terrifying than finding something physical. Mr. Henderson. The old man who rented 407. He was a quiet sort. Always wore a tweed cap, even indoors. He stored old books, mostly. Said they were his memories. I remember him talking to his boxes, sometimes soft murmurs, like he would if he was talking with them. What if he left something behind in that empty unit that wasn't? I held my breath, listening harder. The individual words were still blurry, like trying to see through how they knew. The static shifted. It became a confused chorus of whispers. A noisy, overlapping sound. They weren't just picking up stray signals. They were responding to my presence, my thoughts. The odds this wasn't a malfunction or a memory. This was active, and it was focused on me. I backed away slowly, the Challenger 2000 still clutched in my hand, its whispers following me. Maybe it felt like a bunker, a safe haven from the vast, empty corridors. I closed the heavy steel door. All the radio's static lessened a little, a faint hum now, almost ignorable. I took a deep, shaky breath. Maybe it was just proximity. Maybe I could just ignore it for the rest of my shift. The false sense of safety shattered. My desk radio, the larger, older model, usually silent unless and then the whispers. Clearer now, no longer muffled. They were saying my name. Adam, we see you. The ozone smell filled my small office, sharp and suffocating. It wasn't just my Honda, they were using all the channels. And they were here, in my office, with me. I ripped the Challenger 2000 from my belt, slamming it onto the desk. I fumbled for the desk radio's come back. The fourth floor. It wasn't a question. It was a command. My hands shook so badly I dropped my notebook, pages scattering across the floor. The voices from Bo, they were pursuing me, not with footsteps, but with sound. And I felt an undeniable pull to obey. I could have run. I could have called the police, told them I was having a psychotic break. Anything they knew about my notebook, about my Challenger 2000. They knew my name. I had to understand. I had to know what was in Unit 407, what Mr. Henderson had truly left behind. So against every inch back towards the elevators. Back towards the fourth floor. Back towards the source of the voices. The fourth floor was a tomb. As I stepped out of the elevator, the static on my Challenger 2000 NT, I knew I had locked it myself during my last round. It was a small detail, one I noticed before on inside 408 on the dusty floor with a single faded photograph. A black and white image of Mr. Pinned, and next to him, a small spiral-bound notebook, just like mine. The words on my radio sharpened. He. I dropped the photograph, scrambling back. The whispers on my Challenger 2000 were no longer just I could feel the plastic housing vibrating, humming with an internal energy. The ozone smell was now just like him. They knew I was holding it. They were inside my personal device. My lifeline. The SI, they were here. Everywhere. And they were in my hand. I had to shut them out. All of them. My only chance was to cut off their access. The main power grid for St. Verick storage. It was a drastic, dangerous move, but I couldn't think the voices were a cacophony now. 1,000 whispers screaming my name, warning me. Don't know I dropped the Challenger 2000, leaving on the dusty floor, its screen still flickering. I wouldn't. I burst into the utility room, gasping. The air here was thick with the ozone smell. Even stronger the static was coming from the wires, the circuits, the very structure of the building. The voices and awareness woven into the fabric of the facility's electrical grid. Adam, a chorus of whispers waiting. We know your notebook. We know your name. We know your silence. I screamed, a raw, primal sound that echoed in the small room. With all my strength, I grabbed the H the voices howled, a deafening chorus of static and distorted words. The entire room vibrated. My fingers slipped, scraping against the metal, a jolt of pain shooting up my arm. The ozone burned. I pushed again, tears streaming down my face, fighting against something I couldn't see, couldn't do. With a final desperate heave, the switch clicked. Darkness. Silence. For a moment, there was nothing. It wasn't from the radios, which were now dark and inert. It was in the air. A low hum. Just beneath, I just muted them. They were still here, woven into the structure, into the very air. Waiting for TH, waiting for me. I'll be back tomorrow night. I always am. If this one kept you up, I'll like a subscribe.